All right, we stay in the Big Ten. It's Kurt Signetti and the traveling ATM machine that is the Indiana Hoosiers taking on the Michigan State Spartans. Indiana 7-point road favorites, 45 the total. I know I like me some Jonathan Smith, and I think Michigan State, he's gotten all the effort that he can out of this team, but that was a step backward, especially for his defense last week against Michigan. That's not a very good Michigan offense, and in the second half, they just worked you over. And you had no answers for Davis Warren. And your one job, if you're Michigan State in that game, cover Colston Loveland. He's the only guy that scares you in the passing game. And yet somehow he burned them over and over again in the second half. I couldn't believe it, how soft and how horrific the coverage was downfield against the guy that's carrying this whatever passing attack Michigan has. Colston Loveland's been at the receiving end of it. They don't have a great receiving core. The perimeter guys don't scare you. Why the hell are you leaving the tight end open? As you can tell, I was on Michigan State in that game, and I was very frustrated watching it. And the defensive coverage they did not provide against Loveland, and they ended up losing 24-17. They still battled right to the end, had a chance, but they got stopped on downs, and they fall short 24-17. Got to admit, I was disappointed by the Michigan State defense to give up, all the yardage and, have really no answers for Michigan after halftime. It was disappointing. And if you think you're having trouble with Michigan's offense, how are you going to handle this Indiana freight train now? And it doesn't even matter anymore who the quarterback is. Taven Jackson was fine, totally fine at the quarterback spot. Kurt Signetti told us that. He said, we have faith in him. He's ready to go. He's experienced. He's been around quite a bit. And he has played well in these two games without Curtis Rourke at quarterback. It's a pretty solid Washington defense still, and he was good. Solid, moved the ball. They ran the ball well with Justice Ellison. He had a huge game. And now the rumblings early in the week are that Curtis Rourke might be ready to go and return for this game against Michigan State. And even though Jackson's been solid, Curtis Rourke is still better. He's done a nice job in his absence, but Curtis Rourke is still, you're a better offense and you have a better quarterback with him under center. I'm on Indiana. I laid 6.5. It's gone up to 7. I still like it. I mean, this team has rewarded their backers all year. They're an absolute freight train. They've covered 7 in a row. I've been on pretty much all of them. I even took them against Washington, even with Jackson. I still said, you know what? They're overreacting a bit too much to no Curtis Rourke. Indiana can still win by a touchdown at least. And sure enough, they did, 31-17. Yeah. Indiana, there's no way I'm stepping in front of them. I laid 6.5. I think it's 7. I still like it. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, it looks like Rourke might be back. I mean, we hit on it last week that even with Jackson, I mean, it didn't have to be crazy. He was just fine in that game. I mean, what do you throw over here? 124, 11-19. You did have a pick, but they ran it. They ran their throat. The Indiana defense, at times they've given up yards, but they've been pretty good at times this year, Bavano, and I thought they were pretty good in that game against Washington. They got a few turnovers with Rodgers.
That was only their
picks.
Second under. That was their second under of the season against Washington last week.
Yeah, it stayed under. Yeah, 31-17. Michigan State, talk about a team that should have won that game. They covered, but won it. Bavano. I mean, from the opening drive, they drive it all the way down the field.
Yep.
And don't score.
Yep.
And the fourth to go. They did that a couple times, especially that opening drive. I think they had a missed field goal. I mean, just talk about taking the gun and shooting yourself in the foot. That was Michigan State. All the love here. I get it's Indiana. And I think it's good. I think if Childs doesn't, have a horrible game, we'll see. If the defense travels, and even if Rourke's back in, I could see him winning here big on the road. This Indiana team's been great, but I a little bit more to, and maybe these teams just aren't good enough where they could keep taking care of business. But man, that on the road, watch out, especially if the quarterback has a bad game. Things get a little different. So I just put that out for all the Indiana love. Just going on the other side a little bit. But I get it. If you've been making money, keep rolling.
That's where I'm at. Maybe you don't jump in this week if you've never been on Indiana this year, but because I've been riding them every week, we keep doing it.
If you got 6.5 too,
yeah,
good. It's better than the 7. And yeah, they've been money. I mean, you've just been cashing.
They can absolutely win the Big Ten and be in the playoff. They've shown me how good enough that they can be. Now they're going to face a couple of teams that'll challenge them later on, but Nevertheless, they could do
Yes, here. That's coming up. So maybe this is kind of, I don't know, the last week, just keep on getting fat and happy and cashing with them. And, two road teams that not very good teams in UCLA and Northwestern, but took care of business. You got to play who's in front of you, kind of. And we'll see if that continues here.
Yeah, they got Michigan after this, and then a bye week. And the great thing is they play Ohio State off a bye week. So they get a bye. Curt Cignetti's got an extra time to get ready for that game at Ohio State, which is by far the toughest game on their schedule this year. How good's that game going to be? Indiana and Ohio State. I can't wait for that in a couple weeks.